Hi, good morning. It's Dawn here at Stickle Tarn, and this is our first video on Patreon. So welcome. The whole plan is, or the idea is, that I'm going to be doing, or we're going to be doing, regular videos and updates of life on our small holding here in South Wales, and explaining and showing ways that we make money from the small holding, and showing the mistakes that we've made along the way, what's worked for us, what hasn't worked for us, and exactly what's involved in running a small holding, what to expect from the small holding, and what costs are involved, what skills are needed. So yeah, so that's the idea of what I'm going to with Patreon. And it's come about because, yeah, we've been doing this now for 8 years. Yes, we are still very much beginners, and we are still learning a lot. We're still making a lot of mistakes, but we also know what works for us now and what doesn't work. And we've had a lot of people come and tour our small holding, because we try to live a self-sufficient as possible lifestyle here. We'll never be 100% self-sufficient. That is never the aim. Somebody's on the electric fence. Buffalo on the wrong side of it. We'll never be 100% self-sufficient, and that isn't the plan. But we want to be as self-sufficient as possible, so we raise all our own meat, we grow all our fruit and vegetables, we preserve what we can, so we're not very dependent on shops at all, or external sources. So through all these videos and posts, I'm going to explain and show how we do it and what it is we do. And as you can see, it's a very misty morning here today. No doubt the sun will break through at some point, and it'll hopefully turn into a nice autumnal day. I'm up here, and as you can see behind me, I've got some of our young water buffalo and the female water buffalo. They were never ever part of our small holding plan. It's just something that happened, but I'll get more onto them in another video, and how we utilise the water buffalo and what they provide for us. So yeah, we do have a lot of people have come and toured our small holding, and they ask lots of questions. How do we do this? How do we do that? How can we make a living? Would this work? Would that work? A lot of it is very dependent, of course, where you are, what money you've got. Yeah, so we get a lot of people asking, you know, how we do it, how did we get started, why did we start? Now, it all started many years ago, long before we even had a small holding. We bought this place in July 2014. We moved in here, and it was literally a farmhouse and 5 acres. I'll try and pop some photos up in the post of what it was like when we first got here. When we came to view, we viewed lots of properties. We had an idea in mind of what we wanted. We were looking for something fairly flat. We were specifically looking here in the South Wales area, and we couldn't really visualize how big. We thought 5 acres, because we couldn't visualize how big 5 acres was, and or even how big an acre is. And of course you can't, they don't come squares. They come all sorts of shapes and sizes: triangular, oblong, zigzaggy, you know, it all depends. We would have liked running water. We haven't got running water. We're at the top of a mountain. We are surrounded by forest. I don't know if you can see all the forest there, but yeah, we're surrounded all the way around by the forest, and over the back there it drops away down to the valley, and that's where our prevailing weather comes from. The plan was we would just grow some veg, have some chickens, perhaps raise a couple of pigs a year, perhaps raise a couple of lambs a year, and then buy in from local suppliers. Here we are 8 years on. We've got chickens, we've got ducks, we've got goats, we've got water buffalo. We moved here with 2 alpacas. There was somebody in our village where we moved from who was selling a couple of alpacas, looking to rehome them, and so we offered to bring them here to Wales with us. And of course we've got water buffalo. We rear pigs every other year. We've reared a flock of Hebridean sheep because they were always on Martin's list to do. So we've done a lot of the run-of-the-mill things, and there are things we now realised we don't want to do. It's not worth the effort of doing. And it's having that dream when you're making the plans and looking at properties and you're thinking, oh, we could do this, we could do that, you know, plant up a little orchard and we'll have a little wildlife area and have a big pond, you know, have a little woodland. We can have bonfires in the evening and sit and cook on the open fires and, you know, living the good life. In reality, it's wet and cold and muddy, and yes, we do have some evenings where we sit and cook by an open fire, and we do have family come up and enjoy some of it, although they don't particularly like the adverse weather. They don't like the cold, the damp, they don't like the animal smells, they don't like the mud. We've had a family turn up with little white plimsolls on, you know, and things like that, and we live in Wellingtons. So the reality is very different to the dream. Now, when we moved here, like I said, we had 5 acres, and I remember that first morning when we got up, and it was a sunny morning. We arrived here in the rain. It was a sunny morning. We got up and we stood outside of a cup of tea and we looked across this 5 acres and we thought, wow, isn't it big? What are we going to do with it? And to us it was big, because up until then all we'd had was a 100-foot garden where we kept a few bees and a few chickens scratching around and grew a little bit of veg. And then suddenly you've got all this big 5 acres. And when you're standing there looking at 5 acres and all you've got is a spade and a fork, you can then see the mammoth task ahead of you. The land we bought had been grazed by horses for 14 years. Prior to that, it used to be a dairy farm, and the previous owners had divided it all up into small lots and sold it off. So we were buying the farmhouse with 5 acres. The one thing it didn't have that we really wanted was outbuildings. There's a little lean-to barn one side of the house, and there's another half barn in the back garden, which has since been converted to a workshop for Martin, and a wood store, etc. So outbuildings is something, yeah, we're really short of. Now, we had 2 alpacas and we had a couple of beehives. So the first thing we planned, in fact we planned it a couple of weeks prior, exactly where the beehives were going to go, because we had to transport them down in one of our trips down here. And I'd already picked out a corner that I wanted to fence off and plant up as an orchard. There was nothing here. There was nothing. We had a boundary fence of sorts, which was all strung together with bits of baling twine, etc. There was no that there was no hedging. The hedging had been allowed to grow into trees, and you can see the evidence of that now along that road there. We've kept the trees and we've taken what was the hedging right back down to help it regenerate. But yeah, the hedging was all up at that height, so it was all very damp, overshadowed. A lot of the land, the grass had died back from the edges because it was all overhanging. But I had in my mind where I wanted to plant an orchard. And so one of the first things we did, a couple of days before we moved down, we brought the beehives down and we set them up in that corner. And I had a rough idea then in my head where the chickens were going to go. They have since moved twice. And I had a rough idea where the alpacas were going to go. And they've moved as well. But anyway, it was all a learning curve. So yeah, we got these beehives in. So the day we moved here, the day before we'd come down, 2 days before, we'd come down with the alpacas and with their shelter, put their shelter up, and set the alpacas up in the middle of this 5 acre, well, it was 4 acres, 1 acre was fenced off in the 4 acres. So we put this shelter up so the alpacas had somewhere to feed and have water and that. So there we were, standing there on this sunny morning in July, looking around this land and thinking, what on earth are we going to do? You know, there's too much land here for us. You know, I can't see that we're ever going to use it. But we did use it. We have filled it. We filled it to, it's not filled to capacity. We've still got a lot of space. But we filled it and we went ahead and bought another 15 acres 18 months later because we needed more land. So my first bit of advice would be, 1, write down a list of exactly what you're looking for. We wanted an open fire. We wanted, well, a septic tank we didn't have a choice over. Most of the properties around here are on septic tanks. There's no mains gas around here. So we have a wood solid fuel Rayburn, which is good. We didn't want oil. We didn't want to be dependent on electric, oil or gas bottles. So write down on your list what you wanted. Yes, so ours was open fire, solid fuel cooking and heating. We would have liked our own water supply, but we had to give on that. We are on mains water. We are on a septic tank. We wanted fairly flat land, which for Wales we've actually got. We would have liked a woodland area. We haven't got that. And we wanted to be off. We didn't want a road frontage. We've lived in previous houses that had road frontage. We wanted a driveway leading down to the house, so we were away off the road and not visible from the road. So we have got that. We wanted outbuildings. Well, we managed to get 2 outbuildings and that was it. What else was on our list? We wanted, of course, we wanted to be detached, because we didn't want neighbours being attached to us, although of course you'll always have neighbours on your boundary. Yeah, so I think that was sort of more or less it. We didn't want to be in a village, we didn't want to be in a town, we didn't want to be too far from the sea. We're actually about 40 minutes from the sea in several different directions. We've got the forest, we've got the mountains, so we've got just about everything else on our list. So getting back to that July morning when we stood there with a cup of tea and we're thinking, well, where do we start? What do we do? We'd got a sort of a chicken shelter put up the day before in the rain. So we finished doing that. We got the chicken shelter up. We were gutting the house completely so it could all be redecorated. Our son-in-law came up who was a painter decorator, and he was going to do the whole house top to bottom. and we thought, right, we'll concentrate a bit on the house, get that habitable. Our furniture was all in storage in the barn, and then we will you know, look at the land. And of course, in between, I'm out here and I'm looking, where would I like a vegetable area, how would I like to do it, where are we going to have fences, and doing lots of scribbles on bits of paper, working out layouts of what we can have where, and dividing it all up into little paddocks. And it's good to do that, you know, work it all out. You've got to know in your own mind what it is you want to do. We knew we wanted to grow vegetables, we knew we wanted to grow fruit, we knew we wanted chickens, we wanted bees, we wanted, you know, a little orchard place. We had the alpacas. Eventually we would be getting pigs, and eventually we'd be rearing up a couple of lambs for the freezer. That was always the plan. So dividing things up on paper was, and drawing out little plans, was a good exercise to do, and writing lots of lists. This field I'm walking through at the moment, let me turn round, is what I call my little woodland field. Because we didn't have a woodland, I decided to plant up a woodland, and I'd earmarked this field off, and started. I did have a few trees of my own that I'd been growing, but I started then looking into buying in young trees, which are horrendously expensive. Growing trees on from seed, etc., and ones that I could put here in my little woodland tree, my little woodland area. And of course it's got a willow hedging, which is starting to die back, but there is a willow hedging all the way up to the top there. Yeah, so this little field was earmarked off as a woodland field, and that was sort of one of the first things. And one of the next things I earmarked off was where I wanted the vegetable area. Now initially we'd found an old greenhouse in the hedgerow. There was very little of anything here actually, because the previous people had taken absolutely everything. There was no bricks, there was no stones, there was no bits of wood, there was nothing. They'd literally gutted the place. So but we found this old greenhouse in the hedgerow, and we aluminium frame, and we pulled it out because we'd left our greenhouses behind for the other people. Pulled it out, and underneath a pile of rubbish in a little shed, or falling down shed, we found a load of panes of glass. So I started fitting them to the greenhouse. We were short of some, but we sited it where I planned on having my vegetable garden. The sun's just coming up over there. So we sited this where I planned on having the vegetable garden, and we'd also brought a small polytunnel, one of these small green covered polytunnels with us. So we brought that with us, and started setting that up, because I had brought a lot of plants. We were in the middle of the growing season, brought a lot of plants that I'd been growing in pots, and they needed somewhere to go, so they were being set up in there. That was a very quick lesson to learn, because then I think it was a couple of weeks later, we had some very high winds, and of course the prevailing winds come right across and ripped right across my vegetable, what I planned would be my vegetable area, and all the glass, most of the glass got shattered in the greenhouse, and it was very unsafe. So it was decided, yeah, we couldn't really have a glass greenhouse there in such an exposed area. It'd probably work now because it's not as exposed, but at the time it was quite frightening. I ordered a shed because I needed somewhere to put all the gardening stuff. So we got a shed that was put up within our first few months. I'd marked out where I was having raised beds, and they all got done. I'll try and pop some pictures up to go with all of this. Yes, and sort of got planting in them. The planting and the growing has always been my department. Another thing that we learned very quickly was how much water needed to be transported from the outside tap. And yeah, so we were shifting around water for the alpacas and for the chickens. Of course, it was the middle of summer, for anything that was growing. Martin was working away when we first came here, because we still had a business back in Bedfordshire, and he was here just a couple of days a week, so it was a lot of work. It was extremely hot, and the heat was totally different to the heat I'd experienced before, and it was different in the respect of there was no shade here, there was no getting away from it. It was just a full-on sun, burning sun, and being full on, you just couldn't be out in it during the day. It was early morning, late afternoon, early evening, you'd be out there, but you wouldn't be out there during the day in the heat of it. And there was just always so much to do. And another thing we discovered was we didn't have logs. We didn't have anywhere to get logs. We didn't know anywhere to buy logs. The previous people didn't use logs, they used coal or anthracite on the log burner. So yeah, if you're getting a small holding, you want all that information beforehand. So we were buying in logs, and we were buying them builder's bags, a dumpy ton bag. We were buying them in like that, and they were costing us £40–50 for logs, and we were going through one of those a week. So yeah, it was that was a big eye-opener, and so whatever you do, or whatever we planned to do, for one, we needed equipment. We needed chainsaws, we needed ways of transporting things. So we got a small quad bike and a little trailer to go on it. We would go down the forest and find fallen logs down there, fallen trees. We had a cheap little chainsaw, so Martin would head off down there, fill up the little trailer, bring it back. But of course, all this had to be seasoned. Yeah, so that all had to be seasoned, and everything was just wet. So it was, yeah, that first year was tough. You're trying to dig the ground, and you couldn't dig it. All you had was a spade and a fork. So I was building up raised beds and doing them on a no-dig method. Just noticed I got an arc of, can you see that? Arc of light over there. Bit weird. And buying, and the soil here was just so poor. There was just nothing to it. It'd been overgrazed for 14 years and no goodness had been put back into it. So I was buying in lorry loads of spent mushroom compost and topsoil, and trying to build up the condition of the soil for growing. And it was just a money pit. It was every week we were spending money, and I'm not talking small amounts of money. This was, it was all adding up to large amounts, and we were trying to make the house habitable as well. And the grass in that 4-acre bit was starting to grow. Well, it was starting to grow, but so were the docks and the nettles and everything else, the sorrel, and it was all taking over the field. And we had no way of cutting it. lawnmower wasn't going to do it, strimmer was going to take too long, so we had to buy a topper, which meant we had to get a small tractor. Yeah, so it's just money, 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 you know, constant money. So we were sort of trying to keep on top of that, you know, keeping it all cut down to try and stop the weeds from reseeding all over the place. And slugs, I'd never known so many slugs, you know, anything I planted just got eaten straight away. Getting the fencing done for all these little paddocks that we wanted to do, and doing the boundary fence that surrounded our garden. It cost us £10,000 for that lot of fencing. That was the fencing for the 5 acres. All these little paddocks, if I spin round, I don't know if you can see them. But there's loads of little paddocks. Oh, it's too misty, you can't see them, but and there's the fencing around the vegetable growing area and the fencing around the orchard and the beehives and all of that. The fencing dividing us from our neighbour's land, and we wanted high solid fencing for that. Yeah, so, and it cost us, like I say, £10,000. It was a lot of money, and it was a big chunk of our savings. Getting the little tractor, a big chunk of our savings. And the other thing that threw us on that first year was Martin put his back out and he was laid up for a while, and it was coming into the first winter, and it was so which meant everything sort of fell on me. I'm trying to sort out logs, get logs into store, bring logs in. The Rayburn had developed a leak, so I was trying to sort out about getting a new Rayburn put in. Yeah, there was a lot went on that first year, and a lot of mistakes made. Anyway, I'm going to wind up this first video here because I really want to get this posted up and then start working on some of the more positive sides of things. The first year it was good. There was a lot of there was a lot of mistakes. I wouldn't pay for post and rail fencing again. Total waste of money, that is, because we've had to block it off anyway. So we could have just put up stock fencing. It looks nice, but it's not practical. I wouldn't waste my money doing raised beds again. That's been a complete waste of money. And I wouldn't waste my money sorting out greenhouses. That was a waste of money. What else have we done which has been total throwaway money? Oh, there's been lots of things. They will come to me. So anyway, I'm going to wind up this here, and I'll be back with another video soon explaining a couple of the things that have gone right for us, and then over time I'm going to do some videos saying how we make money from our small holding, and ways of that other small holders that in the area also make money from their small holdings. Because when you get a small holding, you really need to look at how is this going to pay for itself, because it's not a cheap thing to do. It's unless you win the lottery and you've got a sack load of money sitting there in the bank and you don't know what to do with it, you know, just throw it at a small holding, it'll soon go. But yeah, that is the plan of these videos, and these videos will be exclusive to the Patreon members only. So they're not going to be like my usual YouTube videos. So take care everybody, and I'll catch up with you in the next video.